Hi, I'm Dave Ingebretson. LeRoy Hyatt and I would like to welcome you to another edition of Fly Tying, the Angler's Art. And tonight we've got a mixed bag for our viewers. We're going to start out with an innovative fly, the CDC Elk, a caddis imitation. Then we'll tie the standard dry fly March Brown, and then another innovative dry fly, well, it's a new fly
to me,
to a lot of people. Yeah, it's the Royal Double Wing, and we'll tell you more about it when we get there. But let's start out with the CDC Elk, which is actually a misnomer. We'll tell you about that too when we get there. What are you going to use?
All right, we'll use deer hair for the wing, and I'll use a standard gray CDC feather or color canard feather and a black tying thread. Now I have a size 16 hook in the vise, and I'm going to go ahead and dress this.
Maybe we should tell them a little bit about this pattern, because it's bound to be new to most of our viewers, and I know it was new to you, and it was recently new to me. This was a fly that was developed by the well-known international fly tyer Hans Wellenman from the Netherlands. And I've never met Hans. We're great friends over the internet. We correspond by email all the time, and that's how I heard about the pattern. You've actually had the privilege of meeting Hans and tying him.
Watched him tie one
I've
fly.
seen some of his flies in the Fly Tying Museum, the Fly Fishing Museum in Livingston, the FFF Museum. But he and I are great friends over the internet, and a lot of people on the internet in a fly fishing group I belong to were talking about this fly and how effective it is as a caddis imitation. It uses the floating and the mobility of the cul de canard. The misnomer is it's called the CDC Elk because it's basically a version of the elk hair caddis tied with CDC, but he prefers to use, Hans prefers to use deer hair rather than elk.
Instead of the elk.
So I say, why don't you call it the CDC and deer? Well,
Well, I wanted to ask him that, but time was
I
late.
think the reason he does it is he likes the fineness of the deer hair. He
That
gets
could
better
be.
control over it
That could
rather
be.
than having the coarser elk hair that flares out. So it's the CDC and elk tied with deer hair.
Right.
How do you do it?
Okay, I've dressed the hook shank. I have a size 16 in the vise. I've pinched the barb. Now I'm going to take one of these little CDC feathers, and you can see you stroke it. It pretty well all stays together. Now this fly will be tied in by the tip. Now CDC feather is really quite greasy. You need to lock this in very well. I'm going to take one wrap around the whole top of the feather tip, and then I'm going to go underneath that feather and then back over the top again.
Kind of lock it in
That
place.
will definitely lock it down.
And I know that's one of Hans's tricks, isn't it? Didn't you learn that from Hans?
Yes. Now there's the feather locked in place. Now I'm going to take a pair of hackle pliers and clip it on the stem.
And I think we should repeat that you tied it in by the tips.
By the tip of the feather. Yes, I did not trim any off, any of that. Now what I'm going to do is just start wrapping. Now each time I go across the top or I go across the bottom, I'm going to strip those feathers, or I'm going to stroke the feathers to the rear. The feathers, I say the barbules. And
Now,
what
it
happens?
really wraps on to start with as a body.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Now you can see that some of the barbules are starting to stand up now. It's starting to make little fine hackles as it stands up. I'm not twisting that at all. I'm just stroking the feathers to the rear.
Now, the impression
barbs
I
to
get
the
from
rear.
Hans is he firmly believes that part of the effectiveness of this fly is not the floatability of the CDC, but the fact that you have these little barbules moving.
The movement, yes.
And they are so fine
Yes.
and they're so flexible.
Now see,
and,
you can see that now. I've trimmed that off, and you can see some little barbs sticking out there.
That used to drive me crazy, some of the spring creeks I would fish on.
Oh,
when I'd
sure.
watch a tiny natural mayfly coming down, and if its legs were moving, just moving, the fish would take it.
It would show.
But if they
you
were
bet.
dead still, it wouldn't take it. And of course, my fly was dead still. And I couldn't figure out, how do I make the legs move?
Oh,
Well, if I'd have
sure.
had CDC in those days,
It would have worked.
it would have worked.
Now I'll take a very small section of this deer hair.
To tie your CDC and elk with.
The CDC and elk with. We'll get rid of that under fur.
And again, don't use too much.
No, you really can't. In
Remember,
fact,
this is
I
a
may-
size 16 fly.
I
Basically,
may have
you're,
a little bit too much
basically
here.
you're going to be tying in the tips of the hair.
Yes, yes.
And these are out at the tips won't be hollow, and they won't flare as much.
Now, when I watched Hans tie this fly, he would cut a small section off like I have here, and then he would measure it, very finely measure, trim the butts in a way that he would not ever trim them again. I can't do it as well as he did on that. I'm going to tie it just exactly like we would tie it for the old elk hair caddis. I'm going to go around the hair, find it down, cinch it down, and take several wraps around it just to make sure
Hans
it's
is
tight.
a fine fly tyer from what I've seen of his work.
Unbelievable.
And talking with him, I know he's a perfectionist.
Yes.
And he comes to this country quite often and ties in some of the big shows. And if you ever get a chance,
watch him.
go see Hans Wellenman.
He's great. Now I'll trim this just exactly like you would trim the old elk hair caddis. Just like that. We'll put a whip finish on it.
You know, Hans and I already have plans to meet. He's going to be here in August
Oh, no kidding.
for the
for the
FFF
conclave.
conclave.
Okay.
And then he's got a relative or a friend just north of us, not too many miles, up on the St. Joe River. He's going to come up for some fishing. So if I'm really lucky, I might even get to fish with
He'll
him.
try that, won't he?
But we'll certainly
right,
down
I'll
a
put-
coffee or two.
I'll put a little bit of head cement on. And that's the CDC and Elk. I rotate it around so you can see some of those little fibers as they do move around. It's nothing more than a color canard feather for the body and the little feeder legs and deer hair for the wing.
Now we're going to tie a fly that's again popular in all parts of the country, and the artificial represents several different naturals. It's the March Brown, and the March Brown you might fish in Oregon may not be the March Brown you'd fish in Massachusetts, but the same pattern works. And again, there are hundreds and hundreds of variations of March Brown patterns. This happens to be the one we're going to use tonight, obviously. And it can be tied usually in any size from 10 to 14.
Normally larger.
Normally it's a large fly. We're going to use the size 14
tonight.
just because we didn't happen to have any big enough hackle for a bigger one.
Yeah, some of these
If you want to be
hackles are-
perfectly honest with it, that's why we're tying a 14. What are you going to use?
All right, we'll use a turkey wing for the wings of the fly. We'll use a spade hackle from a ginger neck to tie the tailing material. I'll use a ginger off of a saddle hackle then to tie the hackle. I'll rib it again. I'll double the tying thread rather than use the floss. For me, I just like the way it looks better. I don't know. It's a little stronger maybe. Dubbing as the body or the fly represents the March Brown or dark brown. And the tying thread will be a standard 6/0 dry fly tying thread.
You know, we've said this before, I think, on the show, but more and more I'm starting to try to match the thread to the fly. And we didn't
To the
used-
body of the fly.
Yeah, we
color.
didn't used to be able
Yeah.
to do that.
No.
But now we've got so many nice threads available that in such a variety of colors that we have that option.
Yes, absolutely. Now I'll start the tying thread toward the eye. And with this, like most dry flies that I tie, now I don't know about you, Dave, but when I tie a dry fly, I like to tie the wings in first.
Oh, I almost always do.
To me, I feel like I get a better placement of it.
Oh, yeah.
Now with this turkey wing, you can see that the sides on either side of the stem, the fibers on either side of the stem are really quite similar in shape.
Now, on some turkey feathers you can do that, and other feathers you need both a right and a
Yes,
left.
right.
And it just depends on the particular feathers you happen to have.
Now I have sprayed this wing with a tough film type spray.
Sort of an artist fixative.
Art,
you
right,
can
which-
find under a variety of names in
Any
an art supply
store,
shop.
You bet.
And you
No.
spray the underside.
Both, yes,
you
I
do
do.
both.
I spray them both.
Oh, I do just do the underside.
Now I'll lay these two feathers together as closely as I can get them matched up here.
So you've matched them for size
I've
and
matched
shape.
them for size. And the length, again, you want it to be about the shank of the hook. And I'm going to lay it on top, pinch, squeeze, and pull down through. Now I've left my, I've left,
Let me say something right here. You've done it differently than I do, which is
okay.
fine. You tied yours on laying backwards and then stand
Okay,
it up.
yep.
I tie mine on going
forward
forwards
and go
and
the
then
other
stand
way.
it up.
Do
But
it
one
either way.
secret, anytime you use quill wings, whether it's turkey or duck quill or whatever, after you've made that first wrap to tie it down, never again make a wrap
Don't
to the
wrap
good side of the
backwards.
feather.
Right.
Whichever way the feather's facing, never wrap to the good side or you'll get it rolled and twisted and
Wrap
it won't
away
work.
from it. You
So
bet.
you always wrap away from the good side, whichever direction that is.
Now I'll stand those up, bring my tying thread around, and wrap in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'll go ahead and divide them like so. And I'm just going to quick figure 8 between them.
Mm-hmm.
Don't need a whole lot of wraps there at all.
Nice.
And there's a little wing standing up.
Yep.
Now come to the rear, get a spade hackle off of the side of this neck. And you can see those are really wide.
And if you've been watching the show, we've used the term spade hackle before, but it simply refers to a hackle feather along the side of a cape.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason we use that for tailing is because the fibers are generally longer and
A
stiffer.
little stiffer, yes, yes. Pull some off, and I want this to be the length of the shank of the hook. So I'll lay it on there and measure it. Change hands.
Another thing I think is important too is that when you trim that thing to length at the butts, I like to have the butt of the tail butting flush against the butt of the wing.
Oh, yes.
And that leaves a smooth underbody.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of whether you're using a dubbing body or a quill body, it gives you a smooth surface without bumps.
Right. Now I'll take the yellow tying thread, and I'll just peel a section off here. I'm going to double it. And floss might be just as easy to do, but a lot of times floss, I have a little trouble with some of the small flies ribbing because it seems like it's so big around.
That's what I was going to say, the diameter of the floss.
It's so big.
What I generally do if I have it available in the right color is use a larger diameter thread.
Oh, okay, sure.
I've never seen anybody use 2 until you showed me the trick,
Well,
and
I
that works
just
very well.
Just double it
It
over.
works very well, but you're using, what, a 6 or an 8/0 now.
Yes.
I might rib with an A.
Sure, sure. Or you could do
or
it with
2/0 or
yeah.
an A or whatever, but
bet.
an A works well.
Mm-hmm. Now
Or a G. One company markets one as a G.
Yeah. Now I'll get the dubbing on. This is a rabbit dubbing, and if you mix it, put it on the body fine enough. Now I know you and I have talked about this
all
a
the
lot.
time.
Rabbit is not a floating material,
Yeah.
and it will absorb water. But like you say, if it'll absorb water, it'll absorb fly floating.
Oh, I do 90% of my dubbing is with rabbit.
Really?
Because it's so fine, and you can put it so fine on the thread, and you
True.
can taper it, you can shape
True.
it, you can control it, and I blend all my colors out of various colors of rabbit, and I like it very much.
Now I've run the body. It is a little tapered to it. And now I know you like to reverse wrap your ribbing.
Well, I
go ahead
just
and twist
invariably
this
do
around.
that. Even when I've got a fairly firm body that it won't sink into, I just have gotten in the habit of counter wrapping it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bring it up behind the wing and tie it down. Take a wrap there in front and get it all bound down. Then I'll get my hackle out. Strip that stem off. Get
No,
the hackle
you're
tied
using a
down.
saddle. Yeah.
I'm using a saddle. And I wished it was a little bit larger, but it's all we had, so that's what we'll use. And just get a wrap of hackle down. Let that feather slip a little bit there. We'll clip it off. And I'll let some get underneath it. Put a whip finish on it. I still got a few fibers sticking out there.
I'm glad to see you do that too.
Yeah, sometimes they really
I
grab.
thought it was just the fact that I was blind that I did that.
And there's a March Brown. Got the turkey wing for the wing. We've got ginger hackle for the tailing material. Got brown dubbing, rabbit dubbing for the body, ginger hackle for the hackle.
All right, the next fly we're going to tie, LeRoy. I'm just chomping at the bit here because, frankly, I know you've never tied one before.
This is a new one.
This will be the first time you've tied it, and I just sketched it out for you on a piece of paper. This is a fly called the Royal Double Wing, and it's out of Gary LaFontaine's book on the dry fly. And in this book, he's got a number of there's nothing to say but crazy patterns. This is one of the milder patterns, but he did some, and some friends did some exhaustive studies underwater, looking at flies, looking at fish, and it's a remarkable book, and I recommend it highly. And there's a series of flies called the double-wing flies, and he gives the rationale behind them and all. This particular one, because of the colors, the red and the peacock, it's called the royal double-wing. And it's a caddis or a stonefly imitation, and I recommend it very highly. And I think as soon as you see it tied, you'll look at that fly and you'll just know that's going to catch fish. Yeah. Well, I'm anxious to have you try it. But you know, our viewers got to know, hey, you're seeing it as it happens here. This is live TV at its best. So tell us what you're going to use to tie your favorite fly, the royal double-wing.
All right, we'll use dark elk. Now this happens to be elk mane. You can have dyed elk, a real dark chocolate brown. The butt section will be red floss. The overwing will be a white calftail. The tail section will be green Zelon or Antron or any kind of a sparkle yarn. The body will be peacock herl. I'll use black tying thread. And the hackle, both front and rear, is going to be a real dark mahogany. Now I have a dry fly hook. I've pinched the barb. It is a 2x long hook, and I really do think you need that 2x long.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to go on there.
Yeah, it really is. Now this happens to be a straight eye hook.
And
it wouldn't
if you're
matter.
representing a stonefly, for example, you want a little longer hook.
Sure it would, yeah. Now I'll dress the hook.
This is a number 12, I think you're using. It can be tied in a variety of sizes.
And you know, I bet if you tied it in a larger size, it would be an excellent stonefly imitation. I'll bet it would.
Well, and of course, there's stoneflies as small as 18 too, as far as that goes. But tie it whatever size you know. I need to comment on that tail.
Okay.
I kind of took LeRoy by surprise here. It calls for green Antron or Zelon or sparkle yarn, and as far as I know, he means really green. This is kind of an olive.
This is more of an olive,
and I would suggest that if you have it, to use really a fairly bright green for the tail.
And you know, me personally, I would rather have the olive.
Yeah,
that's just
but
me.
I think his pattern calls for the brighter green.
Okay.
And that's what I've been using at any rate on mine.
Then for a butt section, we'll tie on red floss. Now, whether you tie this on, here's a little trick. I'm not going to clip that tag off. I've got it tied in. Just pull it to where it's the right length. Why waste another step to tie it?
Now this butt should be just a little tip or a little tag just ahead of the tail. You don't want it too long.
Okay.
Because remember, we've got a lot more body to put on there. We just want a little flash of color, maybe 3 turns long, something like that.
Okay.
And then you'll put your rear wing. This is a 2-wing fly, hence the name, the royal double wing.
Now this rear wing then is not going to be very much material.
Oh no.
All right, I'll get rid of that under fur.
And again, a mahogany or a chocolate brown.
Yeah, I think a dyed mahogany body here
I've
would
got
be
a
better
strip
than
of dyed deer hair that's dyed mahogany. And when we talk about Coachman brown, it is a mahogany color, a mahogany brown.
I want to tie this wing in about the same length as the green tail I just tied on.
Right.
Now I'm going to trim this at an angle. I don't want a big lump there. I'm also going to put some of this rubber-based glue on it.
You know, LeRoy, you're very trainable. You follow instructions really well.
I'm married. What else can I say?
It's really fun. I think it's fun for the viewers to realize that if you're a fly tyer and you see the pattern, you can tie the fly.
Sure can.
You don't have to be afraid because, I've never tied it before. Well, you're a fly tyer. Look at, most patterns, you look at the pattern and you can tie it.
Now what I've done now is I've tied on, the hackle here is considerably smaller than what I'll use it up front.
This will be your rib.
Trim it anyway.
You'll palmer it, sure.
All right, the body material will be peacock herl. Now the body's fairly long, so I'm going to grab, this isn't really a real good herl quality, so I'm going to grab 4 or 5 of them here. I tie them always in by the tip.
And I learned that from you, and I've been doing it ever since, and it works very well. It's more flexible.
Yes.
And you don't break them off. And then, of course, our standard trick now, show them what to do next.
Then I wrap the peacock herl, 3, 4, 5 times around the thread. It makes just a little rope of the peacock herl.
And, of course, with the thread in there, you bind it down, and it won't fray up with the fish's teeth. It's much stronger.
Then I just wrap forward. I got to leave room there for another wing and a hackle.
Right.
to go in. Peacock herl is a hard body material to beat. Unbelievable
Oh,
stuff.
just the color and the reflection
Yes.
and iridescent. Now
I'm
your
going to palmer this
yeah.
brown hackle forward. Tie it
And
off.
I like that size. You can see it's not any longer than the gap of the
No,
hook.
I did keep it purposely fairly
You
small.
don't want it real long.
Uh-huh. I'll make sure I have this bound down good, and then I'm just going to stick my scissors in here, trim on the top. I'm going to rotate the vise and trim it on the bottom.
So basically you end up with a body with hackles sticking out the sides.
Out the side, which I'm sure would represent legs, knowing Gary and what he does
Well,
with the...
Yeah, although
I'm
if it's going to be a
guessing.
stonefly doesn't have legs all along
Well,
its body,
true,
so I don't know.
Don't know, yeah.
But light would pass through it and it would be
Oh,
translucent,
yes.
and I think that's the main thing, what the light does.
Mm-hmm.
And that's his theory about what the light does when it hits the double wing. And he did a lot with the light
Yes.
refraction and reflection and transmission and all of that.
Now what I've done now is I've taken a piece of that white calf tail, and my guess is this calf tail is as much for you to see as anything.
Sure.
Now this, I don't like to make this, as listening to your drawing, I don't like to make this as long as the other wing.
No, I usually make mine a little shorter than the other,
Yes,
and
okay.
honestly I don't remember what Gary calls for, but I've gotten in the habit of making it not quite as long as that rear wing.
If it works for you, what difference does it make? We'll just do it our
You know,
way.
it's amazing how few fish come up with a micrometer in their hand.
And see if it's
And
all
check
right.
that out, yeah.
You bet. Again, I'm going to put a little bit of this rubber-based cement there.
Good idea. And when we talk about the rubber-based cement, for the viewers that might not have seen before, we're talking about basically this rubberized material that you repair your tennis shoes with, and
Real
you've thinned
thick.
it out with toluene or other thinner,
Mm-hmm.
and I use it all the
Just
time
keep
since
it
you
in.
showed it to me.
Oh, it really seals things down.
Well, it makes a much stronger fly, especially on hair wings.
Yes. You put it in through the butts, it
Yeah.
binds them all. Now the hackle I'll use here in front will be a larger hackle than what I used
A
before.
standard size hackle,
Standard
1.5
size for
times the
that,
gap
yep.
of the hook maybe.
And I'm going to hackle this a little heavier with this big of a hook and fly.
Yeah.
Even with the double wing, I would like the looks of the heavy hackle toward the
Yeah,
front.
oh yeah. But can't you see already that that's going to be
Oh.
a fish catcher?
Yeah, it really will.
I mean, there's no question.
And I think it will float very high.
And as I say, he ties these in a variety of color configurations with different names. I don't know, he's got 6 or 8 or more double wings.
even different colors
Oh,
even
yeah.
in this. Oh, really?
This is just
This
the royal
is the
double
royal
wing.
because of the
the red and the peacock.
The red,
Yeah,
sure.
but he's got
Yeah.
a whole series of them. There must be at least 8
Okay.
double wings, and this is the royal version.
Well, I'll get a drop of head cement on it.
Yeah. But you tie up a few of those and give them a shot.
Yeah, it does look
And
like it'd be
tie
a
them up in
dandy
different
pack.
sizes
And you
or
know,
different
with-
colors. Now, if you
Sure.
want to match a salmon fly or a specific stone fly, tie some up that looks like that.
And you know, to me, now, I don't have nearly the experience that Gary does, LaFontaine, but to me, with that red butt in there, that means it's going to be a cutthroat fly. To me, that's
yeah,
exactly what
oh
I
yeah,
mean.
absolutely.
Now, there's a royal double wing. It has the green Antron or Zelon tail. It has the elk tail. It has a red butt section, peacock herl with mahogany or dark brown hackle trim top and bottom. It has the white calf tail wing and brown hackle in front.
And that's our show for tonight. Now let's see, what did we tie? We started out with the Wellenman's CDC and Elk,
CDC and Elk.
caddis. We tied a March
March
Brown,
Brown.
and now we tied Gary LaFontaine's Royal Double Wing. And
Double
that's
Wing.
a real mixed bag.
Yes,
and,
it is.
and they're all effective flies, whether you're matching any specific insect or not. And they're flies that I know you can count on. Tune in again next week, and we'll have some more good flies for you. Thanks for watching, and good night.
Dave and LeRoy have produced 2 90-minute videos covering new and exciting tips on how to make your fly tying better and more effective. They introduce you to everything you need as a beginner and demonstrate helpful techniques for intermediate tiers. Fly Tying Techniques Volumes 1 and 2 are available by calling 1-800-883-0124. Cost of each video is $28.95 plus shipping and handling, or get the 2-volume set for just $52.95. You can also order the programs in this series. Each 90-minute videotape includes 3 programs for just $22.95, plus shipping and handling. To order Fly Tying, the Angler's Art videos and techniques tapes, call 1-800-883-0124.